Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, sports fans, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show, featuring Clay Hall, but really guest starring Bill Bender of the Sporting News. Bill Bender, welcome to the Tim May Show again.
Hey, it's always good to be in touch with you, Tim. Thanks for having me on this new experience. Great studio, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, this is fanstreamsports.com, man, and it's going places. And you know what? You're providing some fuel today to help get us there. But the bottom line is, you know, there are all kinds of reasons I'm having you on today. Number one, I said, because, you know, you're a handsome dude. That helps helps the Q rating of this show. Number two, my usual featuring Clay Hall. Clay's out on assignment for one of another term he's dealing with. Number three, Ohio State plays Ohio University this year, and I just happened to check your resume. Actually, I already knew this. You went to Ohio University. And then number four, dude, you're a national expert on what's going on in college football, and we'll hit a few of those, including mighty Michigan taking the field this week without Sharon Morris as head coach, with a substitute head coach named Biff Poggi. Biff. I don't know why his parents didn't name him Skippy, but they named him Biff. But that's no sense making fun of a fella's name, although when you name somebody Biff, aren't you inviting that?
Isn't that the guy from Back to the Future?
Back to the Future.
I got that reference.
Yeah,
all right.
There you go. That's what Michigan's doing this week, man, after getting basically manhandled by the Oklahoma Sooners last week. It wasn't a super wide, big-time knockoff score, but the second half, it looked like Michigan had no chance.
Well, so through the first 2 weeks, we've had the two non-conference matchups that have mattered were Ohio State at Texas, or Texas at Ohio State, and then Michigan at Oklahoma. And the stories that came out off of that were, you know, we overreacted to Arch struggling, where some of that was he struggled. Some of that was he's against the nation's top defense with a very good coordinator who was ready. And I think the same thing happened with Michigan. We hyped up Bryce Underwood for a week, and some of that was five-star freshman, first road start, quality opponent, conservative game plan. Some of it was Oklahoma played well. Yeah. And John Mateer played well. I think those things have to be factored in. But if you look at it that way, it's Big Ten won, SEC won, big brands, all that. And, you know, you get into week 3. I don't think Wisconsin, Alabama resonates quite like that, but it's one we should keep our eyes on.
Oh, yeah. It's I'm very curious about that game. You know, I heard some people talking about it as I was driving in today to do this podcast. And they were talking about how one-sided it was last year. I think it was last year, right, in Madison. As a matter of fact, my baby brother, Tony, who's going to be 68, I always throw that in there when I talk about him. He and his wife went to that game because they're huge Alabama fans. They'd never been to Madison, Wisconsin. But the point is, Wisconsin lost Tyler Van Dyke, in the second quarter of that game with a season-ending knee injury. A lot of things flipped on that because that was their big get in the offseason last year was Tyler Van Dyke from Miami, who Cam Ward stepped up, and we know what he did at Miami. This year, boy, their quarterback situation looks tough again at Wisconsin after losing their projected starter. And you're going into Bryant-Denny Stadium with a team that ever since the opening weekend now, Alabama's looking to make a statement.
Right.
And whether it can or not, basically leans on whether Wisconsin's defense can handle Ty Simpson, et cetera, in that offense, because obviously – Alabama's got to keep whacking people, right?
Right, and they'll get Ryan Williams back this week.
Right.
And last year, Jalen Milroe was a problem, and it was Alabama just had better players.
Yeah.
Now, how does Luke Fickell close that gap? Can they make it a close game? You know, Kalen DeBoer was the hot seat coach after week 1. Billy Napier last week. I don't think Luke's on the hot seat by any means. I just think this is it's a 21-point spread. I don't think anybody's anticipating Wisconsin pulling upset here, but they do have to compete in this game. It can't be 52-7, and the Big Ten can't have that because Wisconsin's one of those key pieces in the middle class.
Right, middle class, yeah. You got to fill up an airplane. You got to fill up all the sections. What do you think though about Wisconsin? I don't mean to. I'm going to get more back to Ohio State and Ohio U, but the big one, the in-state big one for the number one ranked team in the country, Ohio State. But what do you make about Wisconsin I mean, not just stepping up, but stepping up dramatically with the extension, et cetera, they gave Luke after last year. Last year's like mediocre results. I mean, what did you make of that?
Well, okay. Well,
I'm not getting you.
no,
I'm not getting you to make judgment on, but what did you make of it?
Let's take your analogy about getting on the plane. If they were the Big Ten, so the first class, who's sitting in first class? Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, and Oregon.
Yeah.
The tricky part is who's in those next couple rows.
Right.
To me, I mean, USC wants to be in first class. Nebraska wants to be in first class. Wisconsin, for a time period, Wisconsin and Michigan State were the two that were probably Ohio State's greatest threat.
The tweeners.
When Michigan and Penn State were down.
Yes.
They were. And I think Wisconsin's struggling to get back to that. So can they push themselves into that part of the plane, so to speak? And, I think Nebraska is getting closer with Matt Rule.
Yes.
USC has quietly put up a ton of points the first 2 weeks, right?
Yes.
So, I think for Wisconsin, it's one of those teams that this is kind of that game where can you push into that second tier of the Big Ten and go from there?
Yeah. Southern California at Ohio State, Southern California at Michigan, Southern California at Penn State. You go, by any measure, whether it's a conference game or an intersectional showdown, that just grabs your imagination, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Southern California at Purdue. What does that do for you?
Not much. About as much as Oregon Northwestern. I think those games are still tough to adjust to. For Purdue, we'll see if they can compete a little bit. For Northwestern, can you compete? And that when you get into those talks about should the Big Ten, if we ever got to that Super League stage, there was some stuff written about that this week with the Ohio State interview about revenue and what Ohio State should be pulling in, given how much they bring in from Fox. But, in terms of brands that pull in that kind of money, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Oregon does. And then I think USC and Nebraska would be next.
Yeah.
So, again, if you're a program like Wisconsin or Minnesota or Michigan State, where you have to, recruit well, you have to develop well. Luke did that at an outstanding clip at Cincinnati, right?
Yes.
And I don't know if that can be done as much at Wisconsin. They had a way with Barry with the offensive lineman and running the ball. I like what Luke's trying to do there.
They had an image. They had a what do you want to call it? A style that you either aspired to or you didn't, right? But the guys that did, I mean, the running back in the late '90s, that won the Heisman Trophy, Ron Dane. I mean, that was probably the zenith,
right,
of that style of football with what they call them, the hog mollies up front and all that kind of stuff. You're exactly right. I mean, I just remember Ohio State playing at Northwestern last year in Wrigley Field. I'd never been to Wrigley Field, by the way, until that game, which is pretty funny. But it was 85%, maybe minimum, Ohio State fans that filled up the seats. But if you know where I'm going with that, meaning when Ohio State plays at Northwestern, Iowa there, Michigan there, they pay the freight for Northwestern football in that regard, in terms of just seats sold, revenue from just tickets sold, et cetera. And that's always been the sticking point when you talk to people about whether everybody should get exactly an equal share when it comes to the television market, right? I mean, you can make an argument that it should not be equal shares, but then again, how do you lift up the downtrodden unless they get an equal share, right? I mean, it's kind of interesting.
Well, how do you pull the weight? Like, there's been a lot of debate around Columbus.
What is the weight is the question.
Ohio State brings the heavyweight, and they're putting them on noon all the time,
right?
Because they're part of that TV, big brand
attraction.
Yeah, and the other part is, I think college football fans want to see the big games now. Like, you go from a fan experience of watching Ohio State, Texas, being in that stadium, the environment around it, and then you turn around and, with all due respect to Grambling, we knew that score was going to be.
They still had 100,000 people there, though.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. And but do you want to see Ohio State play Arkansas there, or even a that kind of thing?
Right.
There's a case to be made. The FCS schools got beat pretty good by the top 25 schools. Now, kind of segues into what we want to talk about. You bring Ohio University in here this weekend. That's a MAC school. Ohio State has a tremendous track record against MAC schools. Nobody's saying that. But I do think that it's good for Ohio. It's good for Miami. It's
Absolutely it is.
It's not just a paycheck game. It's important for them to get that television exposure.
Yes.
So I don't have a problem with that.
Well, not only that, but then past that, because you don't know this, a 3 years ago when you make this game, or 5 years ago, Ohio's the defending MAC champion.
Right.
They won a bowl game for what? They've won how many bowl games in a row? But the bottom line is that they're a credible opponent, when you really get right down to it, right? Grambling was purely an exhibition. It might have been just to get the Grambling band here, just like Florida A&M. And the bummer about the Florida A&M game from way back when, what was that, 12 years ago, was their band was on suspension and didn't get to make the trip. So I see where you're going with that. Here's the other thing about Ohio State that everybody knows. It's on Peacock. Right. The game is on Peacock, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what sound a peacock makes, but it's not like a chicken, is it?
I don't know.
But it spreads its feathers. As we all know, a guy old as me knows, they adopted the peacock. NBC did way back in the 60s to show they were in living color. And the peacock had different colors on it when he spread his or her tail feathers. But my point is, Ohio State with Buckeye Nation also being the number one team in the country, they're guaranteed probably get at least 1 million viewers to that. That's why Peacock grabs it, right? That's why if you're NBC, you do put it on Peacock to basically promote your brand, but you can't put Purdue Northwestern on there and expect anywhere close to that kind of crowd. So it is an interesting conundrum for the networks.
It is. And, for Ohio State, it's an automatic draw.
Right.
The big TV viewers. I mean, the Texas game proved that. The Big Ten noon window proves that. People want to watch their schedule. I kind of scoff sometimes when you could look at it one of two ways. You could say Ohio State's playing a 3-game schedule and saying, okay, it's Texas, it's Penn State, it's Michigan, but Illinois is on there, and
Wisconsin's on there.
And Oregon struggled to win at Wisconsin last year.
Correct.
And, when we were talking earlier about the tiers.
At Washington is on there.
Easy game.
Nope.
And I omitted when we were talking about tiers. Washington, Illinois, and Indiana might not have the brand power. Those are good football teams.
They're nouveau riche.
Yeah.
Hey, they can afford the first class ticket.
Correct.
Right.
And Indiana.
By the way, I appreciate you staying with my analogy there, man. I really do, because most people don't get me.
I get you, Tim.
I know you do.
Indiana and Illinois play next week. And
yes.
Who knew that was going to be a really good game? The Hoosiers and the Illini and the everything that's at stake for Brett Bielema and Kurt Signetti.
Yeah.
Washington's a sneaky good team. So yeah, you learn. Yes, Ohio State's going to be the more talented team in those matchups, but as Ryan Day will tell you, I'm sure, you can't take anything like that for
college football.
College football gets weird.
Yeah, where you play makes a difference. I mean, at in 2 weeks at Washington, that makes a difference, man. I've been there a few times. I know you've probably covered games there too. It's a crazy place, and if their team gets ahead, look out. It's like throwing meat into a tiger cage with tigers in it, by the way. But hey, let's get back to speaking of meat into the tiger cage. Ohio University at Ohio State. And in-state school hasn't beaten Ohio State since what, 1921?
7-6.
Oberlin, and that was before Ohio Stadium was completed or even built. Obviously, the year before. Bottom line is, you went to Ohio University, a young whippersnapper from where? Pickerington? Where
Lancaster,
were you from?
Lancaster,
excuse me, Lancaster.
Yes.
Yeah, the Bobby Carpenterville. Take me back to number one in a brief way. You go down there. You're majoring in journalism, if I'm not mistaken, right? Because they have a great journalism school down there. And, but you grew up probably an Ohio State fan, I would think. So when Ohio U played Ohio State back when you were going to school there, I think they did your sophomore, junior year. Am I right?
1999.
What were your emotions like?
Well, no,
young Bill Bender.
I was attached, my roommate. First of all, I lived with two guys that played on the football team, Jim Grove's son, Ben. Russ Rogers, defensive tackle. You know, and then my other roommate, JD, he was a big Buckeye fan. So we went up together and, you know, I was rooting for my guys. You know, you root for Ohio University. You get close with the football players. Now, I think what happened down at Ohio University, there were a lot of Ohio State fans. You're going to have that at every MAC campus. And it was an interesting game because we went in there in 1999. It was the guys. There are guys that go to Ohio University that, you know, dream of playing at Ohio State. So for them, it's their one chance to go out there and, you know, have the day of their lives. Chad Brinker, who is Titans president of football operations, scores a touchdown in the first half. And look at the career he's gone on to. Yeah. Jamel Patterson scored in the second half. He was a really good tailback. I mean, really good. He averaged like 5-6 yards a carry at OU. So we had guys around Jim Grobe. And you know this from covering the program before that. Before Jim Grobe, it was rough.
Yes.
It was, you know, there was a lot of losing seasons. So yes, it was, to me, that was part of a season. They struggled a little bit. The following year, they went 8-3. But it was 10-3. The energy in that building was amazing. Ohio State obviously came back and won, you know, win 40-16. Kenyon Rambo made some plays. I'm sure you were at the game covering up, filing on deadline.
Kenyon Rambo.
And but I think you leave that game thinking, and that was fun. Yeah. And I think obviously Ohio State has dominated the MAC, especially under Ryan Day. It is it's definitely been one of those things where they've been really good against the MAC. But when the Bobcats are in the building, I think there is a little bit of a different energy. Bobby was talking about that with me this week, that we probably have more of a presence in Central Ohio than the other MAC schools.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I covered, like I said, you know, like you brought up, I covered the MAC back in the late 70s, early 80s for the Columbus Dispatch. I mean, MAC, and I was basically in charge of every other school except Ohio State. You know how that goes, and just pick and choose and stuff. And I got to cover some other regional big games back then too, which I really enjoyed, like Pitt, Penn State, and things like that. But MAC football was just in my opinion, just a couple steps below. I'm talking about on a if you put Ohio U in the Big Ten for a 9-game schedule, it'd be tough.
Right.
But for a 1-game showdown, anything can happen and stuff because they've got players. I mean, Parker Navarre, I mean, he's a very nice quarterback, playmaking quarterback who started his career where at UCF. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Yeah. UCF. And matter of fact, he was there when Dylan Gabriel was there, you know, and then he moved to Ohio U. And I think he's one of the more exciting quarterbacks in the country. I mean, just the way he can make things happen. I think what's going well for Ohio State when they plan for this game is he puts the ball up for grabs about 3 or 4 times a game in the passing aspect of it. And we'll see what Ohio State can do with that. But when it comes to playmaking, being clutch, I think he's right up there with anybody. But what's interesting about it is this is a game where Ohio State, like last week, I judged teams on how they approach a game. Ohio State approached that Grambling State game perfectly. Mm-hmm. We're better than them. We're more talented than them. We're going to put a nod on our head and move on. And with all due respect. And that's exactly what they did. They played like the number 1 team in the country against a 55-point underdog. I kind of expect the same approach because I think you can see a team's character almost right away during a football season. And so what I'm wondering is from the Ohio U perspective, before I get to Ryan Day, because I asked Ryan Day that because he was helping coach teams like Temple way back when they were big underdogs, and just sort of like what a coaching staff kind of what they want to get out of a game like this. Obviously, they want to win if they can. The odds are stacked against them. But I'm just wondering, from your vantage point, besides a big payday, what does Ohio U get out of this game from your perspective, having gone to school there?
Well, I think in terms of just this season, look, they competed with Rutgers. They had a couple plays away. They went down and beat West Virginia last week at Peden, which I talked to a former Ohio player this week, and he called me or texted me. He said the energy at Peden was amazing.
Oh, it was crazy.
And what a huge win. It's probably their biggest win at home since.
Go ahead. Biggest win at home since
Pitt.
Since Pitt. Can I interrupt you? I watched a replay of the whole game because that's how sick I am, you know, and the energy there was crazy.
And it can be. And it's like that for basketball games. They beat Pitt. They beat Marshall when I was in school, when Marshall had Byron Leftwich.
Yeah.
That was a big win.
Oh, yeah.
And
the green collision.
Parker can play a little bit, and you have a coaching change. So one thing I do want to defend Coach Smith here. I know there was a little bit of when he said
snafu.
Well, yeah, so if he says two of the best players, Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs, he's fine.
Yes.
If he just says, Carnell Tate, two of the best receivers,
there
was some overreaction to that. I was like,
well, but he went on to talk about their defense having their hands full. I mean, as opposed to going, well, their offense is going to have the hands full when Caleb's on the field.
He meant Carnell Tate.
I know.
Right?
We all know that.
Welcome to where we overreact to every little misspeak in this thing.
And welcome, ladies.
Speak a word.
And welcome. Yes, it is. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a coach's world. The last thing on his brain was answering questions in a press conference. I mean, he's got that on his mind. Earl Bruce used to be big about that with faux pas. He called Greg McMurtry, Fred McMurray, a wide receiver, for example, because his brain is not at the press conference. His brain is at getting ready and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, let's face it. You guys done a hell of a job, perhaps, in my opinion, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, taking over for Tim Albin, they won their first MAC championship since 1968 last year, and that was something that for the Frank Solich era, that was the one thing they didn't get.
Correct.
Everything else, they got bowl victories, they got NFL players, they had everything but that MAC championship. And that was a significant one because you have to go all the way back to Cleve Bryant in 1968 to find one.
Yeah.
And
wait a minute, Cleve Bryant, the player, not the coach.
No, the player. In 1968, they played in a Tangerine Bowl against Richmond. So, and I think one of the things when you talk about the receivers, a stat that I dug up this week, and you look at Pro Football Focus for stats, Julian Sayin through 2 games, and they did open it up. Like, even against Grambling, 6 of 9, 236 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions on passes of 20 yards or more.
Yeah.
That's the biggest challenge if you're Ohio to me is how do you keep these guys in front?
Yeah.
Because all it takes is 2 knockout punches, right?
Right.
One from Jeremiah, one from Carnell.
One from Will Casmmer.
Former Ohio tight end, right?
We'll get to him in a minute.
But you've got to limit those early because Ohio State can turn that into a blowout quick. And, it is happy to be here for a minute, and then look at all these challenges that Ohio State possesses.
Absolutely.
And then on the defensive side, you mentioned Parker, but they're going to have to be creative to sustain drives and get first downs.
Yes.
Because this Ohio State defense, like I said at the top, is the best defense in the country.
Bill, I said this, I've said it a million times. I'll say it another million, but back in the mid 70s, I moved up here in 76, kind of like at the end of the heyday of the Woody Hayes run. But, watching those teams play defense in the mid 70s on television or whatever, it was fun to watch Ohio State play defense. It's the same thing last year and this year, especially now that the defense has been rebuilt at Ohio State. Now that Matt Patricia's come in and added his own little wrinkles, dude, they were about as vanilla as you can be last week, except for a couple of things they did, probably just to throw it out there. But the talent they've got on the defensive side of the ball, the speed, the velocity, that's the word I like to use, the velocity with which they play is fun to watch. You're not going to stop every play every time. You're not going to go 3 and out every time, but the speed of the ball, the way they get after people is nuts. And I think we're in for an interesting challenge tomorrow because you've got to contain that quarterback. And then what's the wide receiver's name? Number 17. I get I'm trying to think of a couple of the Ohio U players.
Hendricks? Hendricks can play. Nice football player. I said that 3 times. That means it must be true. Back-to-back 100-yard games for Chase Hendricks.
Bingo.
So you've got to cover him.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think? I mean, you're closer to it watching Ohio State last week. You mentioned velocity, just the side-to-side of their linebackers.
Correct.
Arvell and Sonny are playing at.
And Peyton Pierce, don't leave him out of the equation. Yeah.
I don't want to leave him out. Okay.
Yeah.
All 3. They're playing with not just at an All-American level, at an NFL high level. They could have been playing in that Washington Green Bay game last night.
Yes.
Level. So that's a difference maker.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you got Caleb Downs, who's never seen a play, doesn't know what's coming. I mean, it's uncanny what Caleb Downs brings from a pre-snap situation to then a post-snap situation. of then following up and making plays, but getting guys lined up correctly. The communication he and Sonny Styles have is almost cerebral right now. It's where it goes. But hey, I tell you what, though, we were talking a while ago about what's Brian Smith and his coaching staff, what are they looking at? I asked Ryan Day that this week because he coached on teams. As I said to him, on your way to third base, right. You know, this idea was born on third base. What a joke. And a lot of people were aghast that I used that, but he got it, and he laughed. He got it, and I got it, and that's all that matters. I don't care if anybody else gets it. But he understood, you know, he wasn't born on third base when he came to the coaching. He started at the lowest of levels, lower levels in Division I at New Hampshire and worked his way up. And when he was at Temple in 2012, Steve Adazio, I think, was first-time head coach. But the bottom line is, you know, they I think were 4-7 that year, but they had no chance in like several games, like at Penn State, at Pitt, I think at Louisville that year, which Louisville had a hell of a team. And I asked him, I said, you know, you're on a coaching staff that's working to try to pull an upset or just get something out of a game like a mismatch like this. What do you get? And, you know, here's kind of what he said.
Preparing for those kind of games, you know, putting you in Ohio U's shoes. Yep. What were you trying to get done there? What were you trying to find? Weaknesses, et cetera. How did you get your team, I guess, ready for something like that?
Yeah, you play it one play at a time. I think you look at it as an opportunity to build confidence, to know that you're going up against a really good opponent. That is an opportunity to build confidence, knowing that, you know, sort of like us in week 1 playing Texas. You know, what an opportunity for us to build confidence, knowing that, you know, we can play with, at the time, was the number 1 team in the country. You know, where are we right now? And, you know, this is a team that went toe-to-toe with Rutgers, went toe-to-toe, obviously, with West Virginia and won the game. So they're going to come in here with a lot of confidence. You know, they're going to, I'm sure, take it one play at a time, try to get the game in the fourth quarter, and then go from there. But it's an opportunity more than anything to, you know, again, build confidence for the rest of the season. So, you know, and they're well coached and have a good team. So we know that these guys are going to come in and play real hard.
That's what we were talking about, right? I mean, this team's got a lot of pride. I'm talking about Ohio University. And go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so it is. I'd never used the phrase Super Bowl, but in a lot of sense, you mentioned it earlier. Ohio State has not lost to an in-state school since Oberlin, 1921. You know, there was a hot seat the next day.
But ladies and gentlemen, for a long time in there, they didn't play an in-state school, right, too. You know, it's kind of like Auburn, Alabama. They didn't play for 40 years.
1902 to 1997 or 1999. So it was like 97 years that Ohio State and Ohio University had not played.
Right.
And then they've played a couple times since 2008 game was competitive. 2015 game was not.
Yeah.
So, and here's something that I bet Ryan Day knows and some other coaches know. And I made this point about Billy Napier last week. You can lose to a Group 5 school, but you can't lose to one in your state.
Yeah.
You just can't. Right. And that's why South Florida beating Florida was so significant to me last week, because it amplifies your hot seat times a billion. Now, and you've covered these games over the years, there's a couple times that a MAC school's rolled in, and I think Bowling Green really hung with them one year.
Yeah.
Ohio University, like I said, that 08 game, I think there was a fumbled punt in the third quarter.
Yeah.
It was 14-12.
Oh, yeah.
And Ray Small ran a punt back in the fourth quarter. Remember him?
69-yard
punt return.
Who could forget?
And they win 26-14.
Yes.
So, and that was
never got on track offensively, though, in that game. Never got on track.
And that was a 4-8 Ohio University team. So this is a experienced team. Good linebackers. I keep hearing that the linebackers are playing really well for Ohio University.
Did you watch? I mean, like I said, I watched that whole WVU game against West Virginia last week when they beat them. I mean, you can say it was an upset. I guess it was an upset, except I thought Ohio U was definitely the better team.
Right.
Agreed?
Well, yeah, and Rich Rod obviously is in a different stage of where he's at.
Right.
But the linebackers played well.
But that's a Big 12 team, I guess is what I'm saying. Go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Adonis Williams is a really good safety, and they are going to, you know, play disciplined football. It's just, to me, it's that first quarter is what matters. You can get knocked off real quick, and then it becomes, I think, how many they put up on Miami a couple years ago. Not that I was.
It was a lot.
It was over
a
70.
lot.
Yeah. And, you know, in the primetime setting, Western Michigan was another one that They played in prime time. And again, I think that's what makes this one special for this group of Bobcats is that game in 99 I mentioned, that was a noon game.
Yeah.
I think. I had a couple beers before that one. I'm not going to lie. I was a sophomore.
Peacock et al. Didn't exist back then. Go ahead now.
And then the other one was a noon game for sure.
Yeah.
So just a tremendous opportunity, a tremendous chance. And even if Ohio loses, let's say they lose, spreads 31. Let's say they lose 42-17.
Yeah.
And they're 1-2. And then they go run the table in the MAC, beat Toledo in the MAC championship. I know Dave Briggs will love that one. But they go 10-2.
Wait a minute. Again.
11-2. 11-2. Is that group of 5 playoff worthy? Depending on how some other things shake out, it would be in the conversation, given that they did play Rutgers, West Virginia, and Ohio State.
Absolutely. They took a challenging schedule, kind of like basketball now.
Right.
You know, that it is kind of like NCAA basketball. You know, who did you play?
Right.
And how did you play them? By the way, 2008 team, I've told you this before, the 2008 game, when Ohio U had that lead, my older son, Kyle, who's now much older, with my two grandsons and his wife, Steph. But anyway, he was going to Ohio U, and they were on Court Street someplace. He told me the name of it the other day, and I forgot.
They have a bar or two down there.
Oh, yeah,
they do.
Yeah. Their Halloween is to be, yeah.
We don't have enough time for Halloween.
Correct.
Stories.
I mean, there are great things from an experience standpoint about going to Ohio University. But they're at a bar and they're going crazy because their team is beating Ohio State. And then he said, especially for him and a few others, kind of a melancholy kind of kicked in there because they want their team to show up, right, and play well. But their real team is Ohio State.
Right.
And they didn't want Ohio State to get beat. So, what a conundrum for them. I like using the word conundrum. What a conundrum for them. And, of course, Ohio State came back and won the game. But that is what kind of like all these MAC schools kind of face a little bit from their crowd even. Don't they?
To the detriment, though, I remember talking to Jim Grove about this once. And he said one of the hard parts about coaching at the MAC was you would see – you're on your campus and you would see that Ohio State flag around.
Right.
Not that he was mad about it.
Right.
But he, when he went on to Wake Forest, it wasn't like that.
No,
you're not going to see the Coastal Carolina flag around the campus. You know what I mean? Or the Mercer flag.
Or North Carolina State
so
even. Yeah.
It is an interesting dynamic. But
Mercer. Do they have a flag? Does Mercer have a flag?
I don't know. That was the first school that, the other day I blanked on, I was on a similar station down in upstate South Carolina, and I couldn't think of the group of 5 school in South Carolina.
Yeah.
And they had to tell me Coastal. So, but with the MAC, it isn't, I don't think that's part of it. I think it's more when you're an OU grad, you focus on, it's funny. Miami should be the one that I don't like. But I had a lot of friends that went to Miami. You look at my graduating class at Fisher Catholic, I think 25% of us, and it's not a big school, but 25% of us either went to OU or Ohio State.
That's crazy.
So all my friends are already all over at both campuses anyway.
Yeah.
And then, and then I marry a Kent State grad. So when I was in college, Kent State was who I focused on because of the basketball. That basketball rivalry with that Elite 8 team that was amazing. But as far as football went, I do think as a program, Jim Grove deserves so much credit because he goes 8-3. They beat Minnesota that year. They beat a Minnesota team that actually beat Ohio State that year.
Yeah.
The receivers that Minnesota had.
Yes.
They lose to Miami. And then Ben Roethlisberger was there. He did all right. And then Jim goes to Wake. Brian Knorr follows him. Frank comes in. And then all of a sudden, Ohio's like a steady winner.
Yes.
And, and Tim and Coach Smith, I think Coach Smith will build on that. And that's kind of the cool part is that no matter what happens Saturday, hey, they're going to a bowl game. MAC football, who knows? Toledo's good. Toledo's really good. Jason Candle's great. He runs a great program. There's no question. And Miami's good. And,
I'm your yes man over here.
Yeah, just keep saying yes. Right?
Yes.
But as far as the challenge that they face Saturday, I think we all know that it's going to be difficult. And I just want to see if they really can keep it within 30.
Yeah. Here's what Jim Grove did. Jim Grove built a great foundation.
Correct.
Rebuilt the foundation for that team for that program, which was really good back in the 60s, back in the old days. And then along came Frank Solich, as solid a football coach as you're ever going to run into ever. Did Nebraska make a mistake? They wanted an upgrade, right? They thought things could be better, get into the 20th century in terms of throwing the ball and stuff. And boy, did they pay the price, right? Are they back? That's the big question, right?
With Matt Rhule.
Exactly. But the point is, it's been since they got rid of Frank Solich where they've been in the wilderness trying to find their way back. Yeah. And so don't think the guy in charge doesn't make a difference, folks. He definitely does.
Well, and then from a personal standpoint, we were talking about this before I came on. So I'm that junior year, when I was a junior, my first football beat was Ohio University. I'm living with two of the guys on the team.
Right. So you had inside info
I had a lot
all
of
day long.
Info that year. And,
including the head coach's son. Yeah. Are you kidding me?
And Ben and I we golfed this summer. His brother Matt's the Marshall golf coach. I'm so close to their family. And Jim was on the college football playoff committee. He's just this, like epitome of integrity is what Jim Grove is.
Yes.
Right. And then the best part for me was you covered these guys in college that, I'll drop a couple names. Chris London was a hell of a safety. He was really good. Matt Spittler, he's around here still. His kid is my son's age. Really good lacrosse player. Matt was a really good linebacker at Watterson and a really good linebacker at Ohio University. And I can go on and name all these guys. But the cool part about MAC football to me, and they really were the heart of what college football was all about at the time. These guys weren't getting NIL money. They were, OU's facilities were what they were. They're not what they are now.
Right.
And these guys just went out and played. A lot of Ohio kids, too. And they were fun to be around. And it was fun watching them play, fun watching them succeed. And luckily, like I said, you reconnect with some of them over the years and got to coach football for a year with Jamel Patterson, Russ Rogers. And you could tell they just knew football.
Yeah.
That was the cool part, learning from those guys. And
get lined up right.
You're lucky. You're lucky when you're around those guys all the time. And and I remember them coming back from that Ohio State game that night. And even though the score was what it was, there was a sense of pride that, like, that first half, it was 10-10.
Yeah.
We were in this game. We showed we could play for a half.
Our best against their best. Look what we did.
And then, guys like, I believe Steve Bellisari was the quarterback that year. And I'm in that age range now, Tim, where all of our kids are in high school, junior high, and playing football. We talk to Schlegel and Bobby all the time. And we've all got kids in that range. And it's so cool, like, looking back at that era versus now. Ohio State hasn't changed much. It's still a monster. But I don't.
Hey, wait a minute. It's still the house on the hill.
Right. And I think Ohio is, but where Ohio's come in that 25-year stretch, it's nothing but fun.
Absolutely.
And we do. I'm going to say this. It's not a hot take. I texted it to my editor yesterday. Nobody in college football has a better white-on-white uniform than Ohio University.
I agree with that.
Okay, good.
I think Texas is pretty sharp.
Texas is close.
Texas is pretty sharp.
I like ours better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know what? Here's a guy. I didn't ask him about the uniforms, but here's a guy that can look at it from both sides. During interviews this week, they made Will Casmmer available to us at Ohio State, and I grabbed him for a one-on-one. And this thing I do behind the O, I used it on there too. It's been on there for a couple of days now, but I wanted to get this little interview I had with Will Casmmer, who was a tight end at Ohio U, a rising, in my opinion, star who no slam to Ohio U, but he wanted to try, maybe a higher level in terms of maybe getting a shot at the brass ring. Actually, it's gold, I think,
right?
Because he got it last year. He transferred to Ohio State in the transfer portal and was part and parcel to Ohio State winning the national championship last year. Tight end extraordinaire. And, right out of the gate last week, he catches that little seam route from Julian Sayin right down the middle for a touchdown. And he's very much looking forward to this game, but he can tell it from both ends. You don't just forget where you came from unless you're an idiot, right? And he's not an idiot by any stretch. But let's get to just a little brief little interview with Will Casmmer.
Will, is this kind of an odd, what do you want to call it, juxtaposition where you are, where you used to be, a game like this? I mean, but I would think OU's way in your rearview mirror by now.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, I still think about, like, that's where I started playing football. Some of my best friends are all there. Some great coaches I played under. But I mean, at the end of the game, it's just at the end of the day, it's another game, and we just got to do what we do and just treat them like any other opponent. Then after the game, we'll, talk and, reminisce with some of my buddies and some coaches. So.
Any doubt in your mind you made the right call? The right decision?
I believe I made the right call.
Wow. What's been reinforced about that? Obviously, you have a national championship ring.
I think just overall, just being a part of this team, the coaches here, just opportunities that comes with it. Just like you said, the national championship, that run, the experience you get from it is just everything.
And last thing, what is there anything you miss though about being in Athens, Ohio University? It's kind of like out in not in the middle of nowhere, but not anywhere near what it was like 30 years ago. But what do you miss about it?
I think what's the word? The culture for sure. Just like we were super close. I mean, we had a good fan base, but I mean, it wasn't anything like this.
Yeah.
So we kind of had to create our own momentum, our own energy. And
us against the world kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Everyone was bought in. We played really hard. That's one thing that stood out on film this week. Like, we played really hard, and I think that's part of the culture. And just the coaches over there just really know how to coach and get players to do what they got to do.
And they want to come in here and make a statement, right?
Absolutely,
I mean, yeah. So what are you girding up for? I mean, obviously they got a pretty good defense. The first couple of weeks have kind of proven that, but what are you girding up for most from them? Just their best shot?
I mean, yeah, they're gonna throw everything at us, I'm sure. I mean, it's gonna be a great game. Like, they played the past two opponents really good. They're Power 4 teams, so we're preparing for this game like any other game, and we just gotta execute and do our job.
Yeah, there's one thing about being the guy with the bow and arrow, and then there's another thing about being the target. Ohio State's the target, right? Every time it goes out onto the field, and so Will Casmmer is going to have that, to understand after the Saturday game about what he knows what it would mean to Ohio University to pull off the upset. He also knows what it would mean to Ohio State to get beat. Well, and that's got to be motivating also, right?
Well, of course, he mentioned Jack Sawyer too, because there's another good dude. Will, without talking to him, just listening to him talk there sounds like an OU guy. Sounds like an OU guy that would go to Ohio State and become friends with Jack. Obviously, Jack being a Pickerington guy down the road, and just an awesome guy. One thing I wanted to say though is, like, that's part of the challenge at Ohio now. That I mentioned those guys back when they were in the 90s. They didn't have a lot of transfers then. The one transfer that they had, I got to bring this guy up. Jonathan Goodwin was a tackle there. He ends up going from Ohio University to Michigan, played tackle there for Lloyd, went to the NFL, played for the Saints. Really good player. Now, Ohio University will have, I think 2 years ago, they had 22 guys we call it leveling up, basically. And Will was one of them. You build this roster, then you have so many guys go to the Power 4. This is part of the challenge of coaching there.
Yes.
Is I don't want it to become that Ohio University is essentially a double A or triple A for the big club, so to speak. But I understand the dynamics of that. And I'll be honest, when they had all those guys transfer, thinking there's no way they're going to win the MAC.
Right.
And they did. And that's a tribute to Tim Albin. He did an awesome coaching job last year.
Yes.
So that is definitely a challenge, but you don't begrudge guys like Will. I mean, he's stepped up. He's one of these tight ends has a ring, has a chance to get another one. And, so that's a pretty cool thing.
But see, like Florida State is my team to watch this year. Mm-hmm. I said on the radio again today before I came in here on a show, Bo Bishop's show. And I said, because Florida State was down in the dumps last year after being way the opposite of the dumps until they didn't get invited to the college football playoff the year before. And Norvell, they have rebuilt their team. And now, I mean, I'm talking about in a solid fashion, their offensive and defensive lines, the way they played against Alabama was so impressive. That's when you got something going on, is when physically you can basically manhandle a team like Alabama. So Florida State is back. It'll depend on that Castellano and everybody else to put the points up and things. But with Ohio University, see, when they lose so many guys, that's usually sort of the cream of their team, cream of the crop, and they're not going to be getting a transfer offensive lineman from Michigan going to them unless he is like sort of like falling short. You know what I mean? It's failed down, not up in some respects. So you've really got to be on your beam like Albin was last year about replacing quality with quality. Some qualities maybe you see in a guy that maybe others don't. Right. I mean, it's so much trickier. The portal is so much trickier for them. And I really think now, with the possibility of the transfer portal being just 10 days in January, you heard what Ryan Day had to say about when I asked him about it the other day. He's not for that window being where it is. I think everybody's for one transfer portal window, but not being where it is as far as he's concerned. But man, you're going to have to be making decisions in a hurry about guys who can help you, because you're going to have guys that immediately leaving. The good thing is, who's leaving
right
by the end of that 10-day window.
Well, as you were saying, now I'm rewinding again. I'm thinking about that roster they had, and Dave Zastudil, punter at Ohio University in the 90s. He probably leaves.
Yes.
He works for the Browns now, I believe. Had a great NFL career. He was an awesome MAC punter.
Yes.
We had a guard named Nick Lewacki. He probably leaves, and he was an Elyria kid, and he was like right there in the NFL getting looked at. And, now the guys that they've put through into the NFL, they leave, I think.
Yeah.
Because, and that's the tough part, because do you want to be a MAC guy who leaves and maybe gets buried on a depth chart, or do you want to be a Quinyon Mitchell at Toledo?
Yeah.
The corner that balls out first round. Now he's starting for the Eagles.
Yeah.
I always lean toward the latter. I mean, go play in the MAC ball out. They'll find you.
Yes.
There's plenty of MAC guys that still could go.
Well, you'll stand out.
But I get the dynamics of how NIL changes the game.
Right. And the other thing, and ladies and gentlemen, we're just talking about football, basketball, same thing. I mean, you get a team, you're developing a team, and all of a sudden your great point guard or your great power forward who's come out of nowhere for a MAC school or elsewhere, with revenue sharing going on in the upper level of Division I now, et cetera. It's going to be very difficult to hang on to those guys. I mean, look at the Big East type teams like St. John's and, all those schools that don't have football. They can put so much into the revenue sharing for their basketball now. They can throw an offer out there to anybody that will, I'm talking about the actual revenue sharing where the schools are now sharing on basically a salary basis, except don't call them employees, on a salary basis, piecemealing it out to their better players. Like Ohio State is probably sharing $16-17 million with his football team, but everybody's not getting the same amount. Right. They're it's on a grading system, so to speak, and everybody understands that. But I think it's going to have even more of an effect on the basketball. But I don't know if you agree or not.
Well, and OU basketball is also one. They got Jeff Bulls down there.
Yeah,
all about Jeff. He's a man, and
he's a hell of a guy.
Love him. And, obviously played down there with Gary Trent and his coach, and high energy guy, did a great job at Ohio State. But if you're an OU grad, your dream scenario that I don't know if it's possible is, I've always said this. So like, I want Ohio University as a fan and a grad and alum, I want them to be Gonzaga. It's really hard to do that in the MAC though.
Correct.
It really is, because Akron's good, Kent State, and everybody's about the same. Football, I'm like, I want Ohio University to be Boise State.
Yeah.
Really hard to do in the MAC.
Yes.
Because the talent gaps aren't there. You have to show up against Miami. You have to show up the next week and go to Ball State, and I did some of those road trips as you go to Kalamazoo. You go to these places that are cool to me. I never want to see OU leave. I never want to see the MAC break up, but you enjoy moments like this.
Hey, I call those the big home grandstand stadiums. Right.
Exactly.
I've always thought the MAC mess really screws up by not making the networks have the camera angle from the other side of the field. I understand, east is east and west is west and where the sun is and all that kind of stuff. But the night games, the camera angle should be from the other side of the field where you actually see the crowd because there's hardly ever a crowd on the quote visitor side. What do you think about that idea?
I agree with that too. I mean, anything we can do for more exposure, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, speaking of that, speaking of a guy who's getting a lot of exposure right now, I want to get to this before we're done here. We got to talk to Julian Sayin during the week this week, first time since the season started, which the season's only 2 games old. But just about the fact that he has been sacked 0 times, including against Texas, a pretty damn clean pocket, definitely last week against Grambling. He starts out talking about that and how well the offensive line is playing. But then I ask him about the way he has found his tight ends. I judge quarterbacks, man. They're really great quarterbacks. They incorporate tight ends early and often. I mean, all the way through the ranks. And of course, the lightning rod for that is Tom Brady. But then the way he used tight ends throughout his career, because the Tim May saying nobody ever covers the tight end, at least efficiently, at any level of football. But let's get real quick to a little sound with Julian Sayin, Ohio State's so far on point first-year starting quarterback.
Yeah, the offensive line has been phenomenal. I mean, 0 sacks in 2 weeks. It's been great, and they've done a really good job in the run game and in the pass game, just keep me protected.
How different is Jeremiah Smith as a person when he's involved in getting the ball and catching it? I mean, what's different about him during a game like last week?
Yeah, I feel like he's just such a big impact player for us. When we're able to get him the ball in space, he makes guys miss, and he's a mismatch out
But
there.
does he seem happy? You know what I mean?
He's kind of always the same guy, throughout the game.
Yeah.
And he's not he's kind of more even keeled, I'd say.
And who convinced you? Maybe convincing is not the right term, but I always say a quarterback that knows where his tight ends are is going places. Have you always had that idea that involved the tight end in some form or fashion? I know y'all plan that stuff, but go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like we have such a good tight end room here. Well, we're very deep at tight end, and Coach Key does a great job with those guys. So we have plays designed for the tight end, and we also have plays where they're the check down. So I think we have so many good tight ends that when you give them the ball in space, they're able to make a guy miss and go pick up 8 for us. So I think it's always a good option.
What sort of confidence?
I froze there on the controls. I just was shaking hands with Macadon. Sorry about freezing on the controls, but bottom line is Julian Sayin's off to a hell of a start, and he attributes his offensive line for giving him the clean pocket and all that kind of stuff. But man, dude, he's on point.
Under control and accurate, gets the ball out. We talked all about the quick release all during the offseason. He's under control. And keep an eye on him in the Heisman watch.
Oh, yeah.
Not afraid to say it, because Ohio State quarterbacks have been in the mix, and if this keeps up, I mean, he'll be right there.
And it was Grambling. He had almost 300 yards passing by halftime, and he was done, right? And he's going to have opportunities when they get into real, maybe contested games to really throw the ball around the lot a little bit more. But you hope a guy becomes accurate. When you're developing as a quarterback, this guy came in accurate. That little release from his ear is. I haven't seen one like that. Ohio State closest was Dwayne Haskins Jr. in my 42 years of covering this team. So it's going to be fun to watch him with this receiving core and this tight end core where they can go with throwing the ball. And they really haven't even thrown the ball to the backside of the backfield yet. So that's another avenue they can go. Hey, real quick before we're done, I expect Ohio to give them a game. But like you said, so much hinges on that first quarter, right?
Yeah, they got to hang around in the first quarter. And again, just limit the big plays. I'm wondering if they should take the ball first. I mean, it depends, the coin toss you can't control, but
right.
Try to, like I said, keep chains moving, avoid the penalties, avoid those big sacks. And when you're in those games, rather, it doesn't have to be Ohio State OU, it's Penn State FIU hung around with Penn State because they just maintained possessions.
Right.
Kept everything in front. It wasn't until Katron had like a 70-yard touchdown run that broke that open. So, I think I predicted a lot of OU grads friends. I predicted 42-10, which is bad. Still covering.
Yeah.
Because even though that line's dropped to 31, I would like to see it. If it was like 42-17, 38-17, 31-17, I'd be happy.
Yeah.
But it is a challenge.
By the way, I told you what impressed me the most watching Ohio University. Excuse me. Y'all do take umbrage with that, right?
No, we don't do.
You don't.
I do OU. I've always
Okay.
said OU.
Yeah,
I've said,
but Ohio you don't like that, right?
Matters.
You Ohio,
Ohio U. I've always called it OU, and when I'm in my meetings, being with people from around the country, they'll say Oklahoma. I was like, no,
exactly.
the real OU.
It's like OSU. You mean Oklahoma State? No. Oregon State? No.
So it'll be. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. It should be fun to watch no matter what. Real quick, Bill, before you get out of here, one of the things I like about having you on is you have your finger on the pulse of the national scene and stuff. What is a game you definitely is much watch TV for you this week, or much record TV for you this week?
Georgia, Tennessee.
Yeah,
because Tennessee looks good around Joey Aguilar. He's throwing the ball down the field too well.
Is it possible they definitely have an upgrade at quarterback? Is that possible?
I think they've won the trade to this point.
Yes,
but
the
that
trade
can change. Now, we've been teased here before, and Georgia kind of looked okay. They're not really throwing the ball down the field, but Tennessee hadn't beaten them since 2016. So that's the one that will have my attention. Notre Dame, Texas A&M. The Irish can't lose. They can't lose there. I
was going to get to that game.
I mean, be a tough game.
It's a must-win game for Notre Dame.
Correct. And
because how do you make it up after that?
Yeah. And, LSU, Florida, where does Florida go from here? If they get blown out in Death Valley tomorrow, which is a possibility, the Billy Napier temperature will kick up.
Is this the LSU team? I mean, I'm talking about Brian Kelly has been trying to put together, from your vantage point, it looks like the real McCoy from a defensive standpoint. And obviously they've got Garrett Nussmeier back. I'm not one of those who thinks Garrett Nussmeier is the best quarterback in college football. Maybe others do. I think he's really good. But is this are we going to find that out tomorrow too?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're a pretty good team. And when you're looking at the true national championship contenders through 2 weeks, the teams that I have my eye on, Ohio State, LSU, and then Penn State, we'll find out against Oregon. I really like Oregon right now.
Yeah.
That was, regardless of what they did to Mike Gundy last week, they're good. Penn State, Georgia, and I still think Texas will be in there at the end. I mean, their defense is good too. So that's kind of the half dozen teams that you're keeping an eye on, and that LSU defense is really nasty.
I know she didn't mention Clemson.
Big game for them tomorrow.
Yeah.
If they lose to Georgia Tech, we won't be talking about Clemson that much. Florida, you're on with Florida State though. You got a point with the Seminoles.
I do think I really like Florida State. Haynes King at Georgia Tech. I love watching that guy play. I mean, he's never counted out. Somebody said this last week and stuff too. If he starts limping, look out. That's when he's at his best. Right. You know what I mean? In a game.
He's a tough kid.
Because, man, he just puts it all on his back and then goes with it. And, like the Pavia kid at Vanderbilt. Well, he's not a kid. He's a young man. But, man, the difference, just a difference of having a playmaker at quarterback like that. That's why Ohio University, I'm not dovetailing back in our earlier conversation, but I like this quarterback at Ohio University, Parker Navarra. I mean, I just like the way he plays the game, and in his mind, he's never out of it. And, but he's definitely going to have to make plays against Ohio State for them to have a shot, right?
For sure. He'll have to get the ball down the field a little bit.
That's a dumb thing to say because he's a quarterback, but you know what I'm saying.
He can't turn the ball over.
Right.
Turn the ball over, and if you can get a 7-minute drive in there somewhere, slow the game down as much as you can, and not get the in that stadium, as we found out against Texas. If Arch Manning was struggling on 3rd and long, you can't get in that situation. So
correct.
It'll be a good time.
Hey, one last thing, Arch Manning. You and I talked about this without being on the air and stuff, but what so not impressed me, what's the word, disappointed me, it wasn't that Ohio State was throwing things at him he's never seen and all this kind of stuff, and he was having to deal with just his throwing. I mean, just whipping it out there and stuff.
Mechanics look different, right?
Yeah, well, look different. I mean, they look like Patrick a Patrick Mahomes wannabe is what it looked like, and I'm just going, this is not what I expected. And even if you watch the highlights from last week when they bounced back, against San Jose State, when they bounced back, he doesn't look right. I mean, he doesn't look like what you saw even against Mississippi State last year when he started. And I don't know can you imagine what's going on in his head right now, and also the burden he's bearing?
Yeah, everything's a story.
Yeah.
You know, everything's a story with him, whether he winces or struggles. I mean, he did throw 4 touchdowns last week. And I give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt against Ohio State because, again, that defense is nasty.
But, dude, going into the game,
I know the hype.
You know the pundits. I mean, Paul
we did it.
Feinbaum at the
I
lead.
did it.
And I'm just going, oh, you can't change your tune now. You know what I mean? I'm talking about those kind of guys because he was a deer in the headlights,
right? Is
what he looked like in that game going against that Matt Patricia nuanced defense and stuff. Hey, one other thing. Who besides Ohio State, who has impressed you from a defensive standpoint around the country? I think Texas has got a damn good defense.
Texas and LSU.
Yeah.
They're fast.
Yeah.
Linebackers. And we talked about Sonny and Arvell. LSU's got the Weeks brothers,
yes.
linebackers.
Yes.
They're nasty. Anthony Hill Jr., Colin Simmons. Those teams will be there at the end.
Yeah.
Now, are you built to just get through September or are you built to get all the way through November? I think those defenses are built. If LSU and Ohio State play tomorrow, it'd be a really good game.
Is that why Tennessee, Georgia is a little bit of a, how good is this Georgia defense?
Correct.
Is it a Georgia defense we've become accustomed?
Do they do what they normally do and just make life miserable for Josh Heupel?
Right.
Which they did 2 years ago. Now
right.
we're going to find out tomorrow. Right.
I think Josh Heupel's got a different animal at quarterback now, though. I think it's going to be very interesting to watch that game as such
Absolutely.
a harbinger. Last thing, is there any other game you got your eye on either nationally or in the Big Ten or regionally that we talked about how it's a must win for Notre Dame now?
Yeah,
being an independent, you can't lose 2. You can't lose 2 puts you definitely in the pot. Do we take these guys or not? Right.
No.
The Booyah base at the bottom of the committee's considerations. Is there anybody else? I mean, I'm very curious about Washington because Washington, with Jed Fish in his second year, always give a guy a year to get things straightened out, right? And they look pretty decent.
Right.
What's your take on that? And number 2, the luxury of hosting Ohio State, in 2 weeks. That will be a harbinger game for that team, right?
Jed Fish is good with quarterbacks.
Yes.
That's a tough place to play if you're not ready. Ohio State's gone out there in the past, and it's not an easy environment. So
right.
With the 2 time zone thing. One thing to watch, Tim, I do want to see, you mentioned USC, Oregon. How do they do the time zone thing? That was the thing last year.
Yes, it was.
Let's see if it's still a thing this year. What adjustments? Lincoln Riley talked about Dan Lanning. I mean, they'll be fine. But you know what I mean?
You remember when Oregon came into Ohio State in 2021?
Right.
And they were starting at 9 a.m. Oregon time, and everybody goes, oh, boy, that's going to be a huge difference.
Correct.
Was not. And by the way, the guy leading that charge, the schemer, was Mario Cristobal. So it can be done, ladies and gentlemen. That was proven. Well, hey, Bill Bender, thank you very much for joining the Tim May Show. We hope to get Clay Hall back sooner rather than later. Like I said, he's on assignment. He keeps me ill-informed. He's on assignment, kind of like incognito, kind of blending in.
Plays the best.
Yeah.
You guys are the best. I always appreciate it. Like I said, I really appreciate you having me coming on this week. It just means so much to so many guys and that I knew in school, and I made so many friends. I left guys' names out, like Duffer Duffy. I had to sneak him in. That's the best name for a safety of all time, by the way.
Amen.
I mean, and they're all good guys. I'm going to get to see some of them tomorrow, hopefully, maybe this weekend. And it'll be a good time.
By the way, is Biff Poggi, is that the best name for a head coach you've ever heard?
Biff Poggi is not a better name than Duffer Duffy. Trust me. He was an awesome safety too.
Hey, we'll talk about Michigan down the road. But for Bill Bender, I'm Tim May. This has been the Tim May Show featuring Clay Hall sooner rather than later. We'll see you next time.